The News Line.
Hello and welcome back to People's TV. Before diving into today's news commentary, I'd like to make a few brief announcements. First, we may adopt the live approach you're seeing on your screen for future commentaries. This method is especially useful for avoiding copyright strikes on certain video footage used in our content. Second, it will help us bypass delays that often occur during the editing process before uploading. Rest assured, we will make every effort to bring you any video footage that is essential to see or deserves your attention. The focus of today's video is civil society activist Karantha Amarasinghe. We greatly appreciate his contribution to the nation for raising awareness among the general public of Sri Lanka. He has led the way in bringing attention to many issues that remained unspoken over the past few years. Despite being a Roman Catholic, Karantha Amarasinghe is known for his pro-Palestine and pro-Hamas stance in the ongoing conflict between Hamas and Israel. I have decided to address an issue raised in a video he recently published about the conflict. He shot the video while returning from a pro-Palestinian protest. In it, he claims that Sri Lanka's police special task force is monitoring their actions, intimidating them with phone threats, stalking them, and disrupting their public activities, all because they stand in solidarity with Palestine. These law enforcement members could be from the Special Task Force, police intelligence, or the regular police. The essence of the video, however, is that he and his colleagues want to express their displeasure at law enforcement officials scrutinizing their activities, such as identifying the organizers of these protests and tracking related details. If law enforcement really intimidated these activists with threats or life-threatening calls, that would be alarming, and I'd agree with him on that. But his video wasn't about that. It was mainly about their frustration that officials want to know who's organizing these protests. Let's be clear, tracking organizers is not a violation of civil rights. Let's be clear. People like Karantha Amarasinghe have every right to represent their ideologies and fight for their interests. However, law enforcement officials also have the right, and the obligation, to look into matters such as protests, no matter how peaceful they may seem, for the welfare and well-being of the general public. For example, 2 young Muslim men were previously arrested by the police for protesting in solidarity with Palestine under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Politicians like Mujibur Rahman protested their arrests in Parliament. However, forensic experts later discovered evidence on their smartphones and laptops linking one of the boys' fathers to Saharan Hashim, the mastermind behind the Easter Sunday attacks in 2019. I am not implying that those young men were involved in terrorism. My point is that law enforcement institutions have a responsibility and an obligation to investigate any event that raises suspicion. While every social activist has the right to protest peacefully within the legal framework of the country, we would like to remind individuals like Karantha that law enforcement officials are duty-bound to examine such activities whenever the need arises. I want to emphasize 2 issues here. The second is that it's not just law enforcement that must stay vigilant. Ordinary civilians in any country should also remain alert, stay sensitive, and be ready to question any trend that raises suspicion. Sri Lanka is a nation that has already suffered the consequences of radical Islamic activity. We can never forget the Easter Sunday attacks, a direct result of radical Islamic activity on Sri Lankan soil. After the attacks, it became clear that law enforcement had failed to take preventive measures despite receiving tip-offs about a potential threat. The then Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, accused President Maithripala Sirisena of shutting him out of security briefing meetings. Several high-ranking security officials, including the Chief of Police, were also accused of failing to act on intelligence they had already received. My point is this: the responsibility for a country's security and defense lies not only with law enforcement but also with its civilians. Karantha suggested that law enforcement has no right to scrutinize an activist's activities. Let me remind him, it's not just law enforcement, civilians also have the right to question an activist's actions. While every citizen has the right to engage in activism and protest peacefully, both law enforcement and civilians have the duty to investigate and ask questions whenever there is cause for suspicion. As we begin today's commentary, let us remember the children who were killed in the tragic bombing at Zion Church in Batticaloa. Picture a grieving parent encountering a person completely concealed in a burqa. Such a sight would naturally provoke fear and anxiety. The burqa, by its very nature, represents a constant security risk. We must not allow history to repeat itself. We cannot afford to wait until another Easter Sunday turns into a scene of bloodshed. While the government and law enforcement made critical errors in 2019, we cannot remain passive and let similar mistakes happen again. Every civilian has a role to play. Stay alert, question any suspicious activity, and report it to the authorities to help protect our communities. When someone enters a public space completely covered from head to toe, It creates an unsettling situation. You can't even tell their gender. After the Easter Sunday attacks, there was a crucial opportunity to ban the burqa, yet neither the government at the time nor subsequent administrations acted. Those who wish to practice their religion can do so in their homes or at their places of worship. Sri Lanka is a democratic, multicultural nation. It is not an Arab state or a single Muslim mosque. No community can claim special rights or privileges at the expense of another group's safety. Activists like Karantha should engage with these issues responsibly. Unfortunately, even Cardinal Malcolm Ranjit missed the opportunity to urge the government to ban the burqa when it mattered. While forgiveness is important, prevention is essential. It is regrettable that, to this day, authorities have not taken adequate steps to prevent history from repeating itself. We urge individuals like Karantha not to obstruct law enforcement from performing their duties. Civil society activists are free to carry out their work, but they should not dictate how law enforcement does its job. The decisions made by authorities today can determine whether ordinary people live or die tomorrow. Some activists may believe they know best or consider themselves experts, but in reality, they are often mistaken. You can appear on camera or post a TikTok criticizing law enforcement, but that doesn't make you an expert on national security or qualified to advise authorities on such matters. It's important that we all recognize our limits and stay within our proper boundaries. Looking ahead, Denmark recently took a bold and decisive step by banning the burqa in public spaces. Sri Lanka should follow in Denmark's footsteps. As a nation, we must not forget the Easter Sunday attacks and the immense suffering caused by radical Islamism. Many of those who rush to defend the burqa on religious grounds do not insist on wearing it when visiting a doctor or gynecologist. They remove it when taking passport photos, applying for a driver's license, or completing other official documents. That being the case, we urge you to keep such practices confined to your homes and places of worship, rather than imposing them in public spaces. It must be recognized that radical Islamism is resurfacing, often disguised as solidarity with Palestine or protests against Israel. We urge Sri Lankan civilians to remain vigilant. This is not about promoting hatred or discrimination against any ethnic group, rather, it is about confronting a serious issue, the proverbial elephant in the room. As I asked in a previous video, how would you feel if it were your child who died on that Easter Sunday? No one is allowed to walk around wearing a fully covered helmet, so why do we tolerate the burqa? Complete face covering should not be accepted in public spaces, and the government must enforce the same standard consistently. We know that even a terrorist can exploit a burqa to conceal their identity, and there have been cases of criminal elements using it for the same purpose. That is why we once again urge people like Karantha not to criticize lawful measures taken by law enforcement to protect the public. In his video, he failed to cite any specific incident that genuinely threatened freedom of expression. Instead, he vaguely and unjustly condemned officers for performing their duties. He did not mention any particular arrest or death threat. Law enforcement must be allowed to carry out their responsibilities, especially in a world where global terrorism poses a serious challenge to every nation. We are fully aware of the tragedy that occurred in Pahalgam, India. We live in a time when terrorism is a global threat, spreading across the Middle East in countries like Palestine, Gaza Strip, Israel, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Sri Lanka cannot afford to become a target of global terrorism. The time has come for us to speak out and raise our concerns. We noticed Karantha raising concerns about unsafe modifications to public transport vehicles in Sri Lanka, referencing the recent accident in the Ella area. The burqa, in a similar way, poses a risk to public safety. After all, women across all communities have the same anatomy requiring modesty. Islamic women are no different. Anyone has the right to question a woman wearing a burqa, regardless of her ethnicity or religious beliefs. In conclusion, everyone has the right to practice their religion, but it must be done in a way that does not endanger the public or compromise national security. I, too, follow a faith, yet I do not practice it in public in a manner that could disrupt or threaten others. If this report helped you see the situation on the ground clearly, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to People's TV, where truth has no agenda, and facts speak louder than spin.
Subscribe us for more details.